Hey everybody, welcome to the fixed and variable cost tutorial. In the last presentation we were talking about what cost drivers are, and in this tutorial we're going to be able to see how cost drivers actually affect fixed and variable costs. So to start, I thought we would begin with fixed costs and then we will move to variable costs. So I've come up with a definition of what a fixed cost is, and a fixed cost is a cost that is not, I've underlined not, immediately changed by cost driver activity. So last time we came up with a company called Fadida's Shoes. So let's say Fadida's Shoes purchases a warehouse for $500,000. Okay, let's look at how fixed costs change based on cost driver activity. So here's a graph. On the x-axis we have cost driver activity, and on the y-axis we'll have cost. Okay, and this is a graph for how total fixed costs change. So if we produce 1 unit, we're going to have a warehouse that's going to cost $500,000. $500,000. So the cost will be somewhere here. If we produce 2 units, what's going to happen to our total fixed costs? Well, they're going to remain the same because we're obviously not going to purchase a second warehouse for 2 units. And for 3 units, it will also stay the same. So as we look at this, fixed costs do not change based on cost driver activity. They stay the same. Alright, now let's look at fixed costs per unit and what happens to them as cost driver activity fluctuates. So same graph, we're going to look at cost driver activity and we'll look at how cost fluctuates. So if we produce 1 unit, the cost per unit is going to be $500,000 per unit, or $500,000 for the 1 unit. So it'll start there again. Now if we produce 2 units, the $500,000 is going to be divided by 2 because we're going to have, it's going to be $500,000 of cost per unit, and we have 2 units. So the cost per unit will be $250,000. So we'll start to see that the cost per unit is going down. And then we produce 3 units. The cost per unit should go even further down, which is close to $167,000 per unit. So fixed costs per unit will actually change as the cost driver fluctuates. So total fixed costs, they stay the same, and the per unit fixed costs, they change. Alright, let's move on to variable costs. So the variable definition is variable cost is a cost that changes proportionally to changes in the cost driver. So let's do the exact same thing, and we will look at a cost chart. So cost and activity, and we'll start again with total variable costs. So what do I mean by variable cost is a cost that changes proportionally to changes in the cost driver? Well, what happens is if we have, say 1 unit, and at maybe $5 because it costs maybe $5 to purchase a shoe, or not to purchase but to produce a shoe, then the total cost is going to be $5 for faditas. So it'll be somewhere down there. Now if we create two shoes, or two pairs of shoes, at $5 a pair, our total variable cost will be $10. So as you see, the cost goes up proportionally as cost driver activity goes up. And 3 units at $5, the cost will be 15. So variable costs, or total variable costs, will change as cost driver activity changes. Now what about variable costs per unit? Per unit. Well, what's going to happen, let me just quickly name these again. Cost and activity is if we have one unit or one pair of shoes, one pair of shoes at $5, then the per unit is going to be $5. Now, if we produce one more unit, or if we produce our second pair of shoes at $5, the second pair alone, that is, because this is the cost per unit, will be the same. So variable costs per unit will not change. And as we produce another unit, it'll be also $5. This will be the third unit alone, that is, will not change. So variable cost per unit will stay the same. So total variable costs change, and per unit stays the same. So to summarize this, I've created a table, which is, let me just get rid of the definition. The table shows that, let me just create a new layer, shows that as cost driver activity fluctuates, what's going to happen? Well, the first one is fixed cost, so we went over that one first. The total cost, is that going to change or not? Well, the total cost is not going to change, because if we produce one factory, as we produce another unit, we're not going to produce a new factory. What about per unit fixed cost? Well, that will change, because the cost of the fixed cost will be spread out per unit. Variable costs, for the total cost, will they change? Yes, they will change. And that's because the total cost for a variable will change as we produce more units. As we produce more units, we'll have more total variable cost. And of course, variable costs per unit do not change, because it costs us the same amount of money each time to purchase the same pair of shoes. Alright, so that is the end of the fixed and variable cost tutorial. In the next tutorial, I'm going to be talking about what is the relevant range. So if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe so that you can catch future videos. And thanks for listening to the presentation. I'll see you in the next one.